Hello, my name is Sonali and I welcome you back to another episode of Around the World in 7 Days. Eduardo Galeano once said that most wars or military coups are done against democracy in the name of democracy. In the case of the Africa, we find this absolutely true. The continent of Africa, which was a victim of exploitation for centuries, became free from the colonial power and adopted democratic values after independence, but this continent could not succeed in preserving these values. Actually, military coups started taking place in Africa almost immediately after the independence of African countries. Such is the nature of these military coups in Africa that in the early 2020s, a new term, Coup belt, was coined to describe the region of West Africa, Central Africa, and the Sahel. That is, an area where there is a high prevalence of coups. The name of the Central African country Gabon is the latest addition to list of countries which has witnessed coup of late. Elections were recently held in Gabon. President Ali Bongo Ondimba, who has been in power there since 2009, again won the elections. There were allegations of rigging in these elections. The opposition, the media, and the public were not satisfied with these election results. In such a situation, as soon as the election results were declared, the army there announced a coup. With this announcement, the citizens of Gabon went out on the streets to celebrate. Barely a month ago, a similar incident had happened in Niger as well. Experts are of the view that after a period of democratic stability in African countries, the signs of rising military coups is again increasing. In such a situation, question arises that why are coups so common in Africa? Why couldn't democratic values take hold there like in Western countries, and how can they be stopped? We will find answers to many such questions through this discussion. So let's start the discussion. Actually, military coups in Africa are not a new phenomenon. According to statistics, of the 486 military coup attempts globally since 1950, 214 have taken place in Africa, of which at least 106 have been successful. In the 1960s and 1970s, there was a coup attempt every 55 days. Although these efforts declined after 2000, they have again become a common occurrence in the last few years. In 2020, only one coup took place, that is in Mali. But the very next year, 5 countries, Chad, Mali, Guinea, Sudan, and Niger, experienced military intervention. There are 5 such attempts in 2022 also. Now the question arises, why this is so? Actually, the biggest reason for this is the dynastic trend prevalent there, towards which deep resentment has arisen in recent times. For example, in Gabon, only one party was in power since 1967. On the other hand, elections were held from time to time in many African countries like Uganda, Rwanda, Equatorial Guinea, Cameroon, but the same leader has remained in power for decades. In such a situation, the democratic institutions there are under question. The public there has lost confidence in the electoral process. The steep decline in the quality of life in recent years has also forced people to question democracy. Rising inflation due to increase in attacks by several armed groups such as Al-Qaeda, Islamic State, Boko Haram in the Sahel region has made civilian lives difficult across the continent. Due to this, where the level of poverty has increased, lakhs of people have also been displaced. In such a situation, there is no doubt that the increase in insecurity and decreasing economic prospects have disappointed the people. We also have to look at military coups in Africa from the perspective of foreign influence and strategic competition. With its independence, Africa became the arena of Cold War politics between the two global powers, the Soviet Union and America, and this situation remains the same even today. Just as Russia is believed to be involved in the recent coup in Niger, Russia is also under question in the coups in Mali, Burkina Faso, etc. Geographical historical reasons of Africa are also responsible for this to a great extent. Due to its geographical location, it remained isolated from the world for a long time. It is bordered by the Mediterranean Sea to the north, the Atlantic Ocean to the west, the Red Sea to the northeast, and the Indian Ocean to the southeast. The Sahara Desert is spread towards its north. The equator divides the continent almost equally in two parts, due to which most of Africa lies in the tropical zone. Because of this, the heat here did not please the Western countries. Although this distance decreased in the 18th century, the reason for this was the resources and poverty prevalent there. The greed for resources attracted other countries here, and the cheap labor here led to the development of industrialization. But they were never integrated into the Western society, they were only exploited. In such a situation, there is widespread anger in African countries against the Western model, which weakens democratic systems. At the same time, caste diversity here also makes this area unstable. Here, one group often stands against another group. What makes it more difficult is the competition between them to gain maximum power. In such a situation, some people start liking dictatorship. Leadership inefficiency, corruption, instability is also responsible for this to a great extent. But we cannot solve these problems by limiting them to Africa only. As the United Nations has said that instability here is a global crisis. We have to understand it from this point of view. The growing instability of these regions has given rise to militancy in the surrounding regions as well. Due to this, the Gulf states are facing sporadic attacks. Due to the migration of thousands of people, the human condition has worsened all over the world. In such a situation, stopping it is not only necessary for the world peace, but it is also necessary to stop terrorism. Another thing to be kept in mind is the fact that the circumstances under which a coup takes place are dynamic. To prevent future coups and respond to current coups, countries must emphasize coming together with the help of regional and global partners. Efforts should be made to remove the shortcomings of governance in the form of non-fulfillment of civil rights, socio-economic frustration, and increasing insecurity. Emphasis will also have to be laid on making the elections transparent and the media independent. To prevent these coups, it is necessary that the Economic Community of West African States, that is, ECOWAS, and regional bodies like the African Union be firm and fair in their show of contempt for the coups. International methods of punishing coup perpetrators should be supported by global powers. At the same time, global intergovernmental bodies should investigate equally, and African regional organizations should oppose foreign interference in African countries. To bring peace in African countries, it is most important that external interference be minimized, and for this, global powers will have to emphasize on joint efforts. So that's all in today's discussion. See you in the next episode. But before that, let's note down a question based on today's story. Foreign states have a hand in the increasing military coups in African countries. Critically examine.